Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video, well, podcast rather, because today, because today we're going to talk about Avengers Endgame, and with me, as you can hear in the background, is Emily also, so thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Right.
How are you, house test? How is it going?
It's good. I'm very rested. It's Saturday, sun's out. It was like raining all morning and early noon, and now in the afternoon it's like very sunny, so that's nice. Always take that.
Oh, lovely.
Especially at the end of April, moving on to May, and everything's getting warmer, and like, it was really cool. So, Endgame, right? You saw it yesterday, correct?
Yes, I did.
On Friday, which was kind of like the official release date for the movie, at least like everywhere where I looked. Though it happened actually that in Germany you could watch it actually on April 24th, like the Wednesday, with the beginning of the day. It's really weird. I was like, okay, interesting. Like everyone else is saying like, oh, I can't wait until Friday. I'm like, I got my tickets for Wednesday. What are you talking about? So yeah, here in Germany, I was actually like Wednesday evening after work at 9 p.m. I was like, I'm sitting in the movies. I can see it before everyone else probably. Like at least a large portion. It was quite cool. And I was actually quite
surprised that you got early tickets because, as you said, the whole world release was the Friday, and I think the earliest I could actually get tickets was the Friday. And in that case, I don't think it's very fair that you guys got to see it on Wednesday, which was I can't believe that you saw it before me.
Yeah. Like, it's really cool.
Not fair.
Especially since I saw the original version. It was quite good, so I didn't have to deal with the German dub and have to wait until I see it with you in London, maybe together. So we can both talk about it on the same basis. We saw the same movie in the end, and let's talk about spoilers, because we already did a spoiler-free review, actually, because on Thursday morning, like 1 a.m., I still felt like, I'm so shaken up, I need to write something. So I actually went on our website, thenewbyte.com, and wrote a spoiler-free review. If you're on the homepage, you can scroll down a little bit. After the gaming news section, there you will see a new movie review section, and there will be also our Avengers Endgame spoiler-free review, if you want to hear about that. But the main part of this video is actually like spoilers, because we're going to talk about what's actually inside of the movie, the story, and the things that we saw. We just wanted to react to that because there's so much happening in these 3 hours, which is like, it's crazy on its own. And it's amazing. So how about we start actually like after the movie first, like our general impressions before we jump on in fully into details, because how did you feel after everything happened?
I felt, I don't think it's actually quite sunk in yet that 10 years of my life and 10 years worth of movies has led up to this point. And I've been anticipating this ever since the first Avengers. Yeah. And I like some parts in the movie I was like, really? Why did that happen? And then other parts of the movie I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing scene. Like when they went back to, like, spoiler by the way, when they went back
this whole thing is spoiler talk. We don't need to hold back, don't worry. Just go in.
Okay. When they went back to the first Avengers film, when they all got together, everything was cute and dandy. Yeah. You got, like, they got to reflect on their old selves, and oh my gosh, that scene where Captain America for himself. Oh my gosh, that was such a great moment. Yeah.
This is America's ass. So good.
Yeah, but when that scene when they were all assembling, I was like, oh my gosh. It was kind of like the same reaction that I had the first time, which was really nostalgic. And that's what I absolutely love about these films, because it's a great escapism from like real world and stuff, and I just really liked it. So what were your first impressions after coming out the movie, let's just say, for you?
Like I was just sitting in the theater, and we've all been waiting basically for something to happen at the credits, and it's like, well, actually, like nothing happens. It's like, oh, that's nice. Okay,
Yeah.
they finally finished it. There's nothing teasing what's following up. We know, of course, there's a plan with Phase 5 and everything for Marvel. For example, the next release will be Spider-Man Far From Home, which will be in Europe.
Exactly, yeah.
But, like, what we saw, like, this month or with this release of Endgame is, like, the finish of this is, like, a whole bracket. It's closing in. And we'll definitely talk about, of course, also how some characters, like, stories ended and everything. I have pulled up a synopsis, actually, because I feel like we need to go through this step by step. Just, like, barely going through the things, but with a little bit of guidance about, from the actual storyline.
Okay.
But yeah, after all, I was like, wow, I'm finally done. And I don't know, like right now I'm still a little bit hyped and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm done with this also. Like, okay, this has come to an end now. This is cool. And there will be new movies coming, but I think with now I'm just like overfed and just done with it after all. So it's like a really high note. Endgame was like the peak of everything. It literally was the end game where everything was just on the line, and they delivered so well on this, better than I could have ever imagined. There were like 3 scenes in the movie which we get to talk about where I was like, holy shit. And it's like, yeah, okay, wow, they did this is amazing. Yeah, I was just like almost standing up from my seats, like screaming, yes, hell yes. Oh my god! And like the cool thing was like when I was in the theater on Wednesday, which it wasn't like a chain of cinemas. It was actually a very independent one. They didn't have any ads at the beginning, so it was slated to start at 8:45 p.m. I was there roughly the same time. I was thinking, okay, I got my ticket online already. I can just walk through. With this, it's very sad. With this cinema, they only have like 3 movie theater halls, and you still have to go through the very first one to basically go to the cashier and get your original ticket printed out based on the QR code that they sent you via mail. So you still have to go through a line and wait, and was like, okay, well, I guess I just missed the first few minutes. So I walked into the theater, and they were already at the start in the universe where Iron Man and Nebula were stranded. And I was like, okay, I guess. It was basically just the very first scene and the first logo appearance that I missed. But luckily, they actually thought, okay, there were so many people just like still joining in for this one movie. And it's very important. They actually restarted it like 5 minutes in. So I was like very glad about it. And I got to see the whole thing because there were no ads playing, no trailers or anything. It's actually very cool if you think about it, you know, because it's independent and that they may have little higher prices. I paid 77 euros, so I didn't think it was very expensive. It was actually very cheap.
Wait,
and
7 euros?
7 euros for my ticket, and it was 2D. It was not 3D. So I said, like, okay, they don't do ads. Interesting. And actually, like, went even and got myself a middle popcorn because I think, come on, that €2.90, I think it costs. Just put it on top. It makes it like a cinema visit worth 10 euros or something. For a 3-hour movie. Usually they have like over-length prices and all that. So that was all not happening. I gotta say, it was really worth it. You did saw the movie in 3D, right?
Yeah, I saw it in Odeon IMAX. It was rather interesting. Which was also 3D on a big screen, which was, I think it was definitely an experience that could have been a little bit better if I were to say. I think this movie, like, it didn't make me a fan of IMAX, let's just say.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
How expensive was the trip?
To see it. It was £20.
Wow.
So
okay, like almost triple what I paid.
I know. Yeah.
Damn.
It's I think it was quite overpriced for what it was. I mean, it's the grand finale for everything, but I just thought, did I really need to see this in 3D, like on a big screen? And because the cinema, they don't allocate seats for you. It was a massive free for all.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I know.
So it was my battle royale. 100 people enter and only one gets a good seat. Oh
yes. No. Literally.
You paid £20 for that. Oh my god.
I know. And I shall
That's 23 euros just for everyone else outside of the UK, you know. Gosh.
23 euros, yeah.
It's just actually a little bit more than 3 times what I paid. 7 euros compared to 23, you know. It's like insane for that. Did you feel at the end that the 3D was worth it, or was it more exhausting?
It was exhausting.
Oh.
Honestly, like, I probably haven't seen 3D in about five good years.
Yeah.
When it was like a massive hype. And this is the first time in a long time, and I have to say my eyesight has changed. I think I was halfway through, I might have got a little bit motion sickness. And because I was at an angle, I don't feel like I had the 3D experience properly, because half the times I saw the layering for the actual 3D effects, which was it was so annoying. But I think next time I'll just see it in 2D.
Yeah,
and
I can really
in 2D.
Yeah, I'm really glad that the more recent times movies actually can be seen in 2D. I saw Shazam lately in 2D actually. Captain Marvel, I think, was 2D. And I think even Aquaman in December when I watched it was also 2D. It's like, no, there's no need for that.
Yeah.
You know? The only movie that I saw lately in 3D was How to Train Your Dragon 3. And that was like a little bit where it was like halfway worth it. But most scenes were just still, they were always conceptualized as a 2D movie because the releases later on Blu-ray and everything, they are still being sold only almost exclusively on 2D Blu-rays. So it's not really worth it making the experience actually cool in 3D when it's only in the cinemas and not at home anymore. So it's like, yeah, I guess.
To be honest, I think 3D is very is going out of fashion. Let's just say
it's a gimmick, just like 4D movies, you know. At least with that, you have like a little shaking in your seats. Maybe there's like some air being blown in your face. It's like, woo! And like with really good 4D movies, they are just like 5 minutes long. And over that period of time, I can say, okay, I guess, that's actually fine because it's not too exhausting. It's a little bit gimmicky and it doesn't exhaust itself because they're just that short. And with a 90-minute 3D movie, I can still see like, okay, I guess, sometimes it's okay. But then with a 3-hour movie like this one, like Endgame, it's just not worth it. So, yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to the movie.
Right, that is our cinema experience, how we watched the movie. Just level based, like how it was for us. I don't know, what did you see the movie out there? Let us know in the comments down below. In 2D, 3D, even in IMAX, who knows? So I didn't feel really like I cheaped out. There's only one thing that I want to add. Usually, cinema theaters are like on a hillside, where it's like the further you go behind, there's actually stairs leading up.
Yeah.
So everyone has like roughly the same angle towards the screen. In my case, the further you got away, there was always a flat floor, so it wasn't really like a hillside where you have a better angle on the screen, and the further you are sitting behind, the harder it gets to see, and it feels like the screen is like falling a little bit in the back, because it's not tilted towards you.
Really?
That was the only thing that I wanted to add. So sometimes it's worth it, I guess, paying that extra money for the cool seats, but other than that, I had nothing to complain about, really. It was actually really nice because there were like French people next to me and students, and it's like very mixed group, and we actually had like people applauding the movie and like had like loud call-outs were like, what the fuck? And like, oh, it's like, we're actually like all together celebrating this movie and just like not caring what anyone else thinks because it's only us and we're all here day one. So we're probably also the same kind of nerds who just want to see it, So that was really great. I had this with the very first Avengers movie back in 2012, when the Hulk takes Loki and slams left and right, and that's like, people in the theater back then, they were like yelling, screaming. It's like, oh my gosh, yes! Because it felt so good. And we had the same moment, I guess, also now in Endgame again. So yeah, that's that.
There's Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah. I mean, pretty face, but as Loki, he can take it. He can take it. He's a god. He is,
that's true.
At least an ice giant,
Anyway, shall we go...
Yeah, let's go bit by bit through the story then.
Okay.
What I really found interesting is actually how it starts out, because before we even see the logo, it actually, like the first, I think, half an hour maybe, is just Infinity War finished off, and then actually the endgame part starts. And I found it quite cool, actually, because it felt like, shit, this isn't really satisfying. And it's actually good that they put this at the end, because Infinity War actually ended in a way where you could say, okay, if you are a fan of the villain Thanos, this is the story that Thanos wanted to do, and this is ending here at the end of Infinity War. But for the heroes, of course, their side gets told now in the beginning of Endgame. So we start out with Clint Barton's family. Clint Barton, who's still in, he's on house arrest, but he's still allowed, he has a very big farm and everything. He's still allowed to basically live with his family and everything, so that's nice. But at the start of Endgame, we actually see the snap happening again. And that was actually in a fashion where I was thinking, oh shit, it's very, subtle. You don't see the people disintegrate this time. It's just like Clint turning around and saying, all right, where's everyone? Where the F is everyone? Oh no! And it's just running around. Then the logo comes in. It's like, oh shit, it's starting out really harsh already. And it just goes on being worse and worse.
I know.
Because after the logos, we actually are in space again and see how, of course, Tony Stark and Nebula are in space, and they sadly didn't make it far. So I think that after 20 days or something, they were still stuck and were running out of food and water and everything, and even fuel was not there anymore. So, what do they do? Well, I really found this interesting how they got saved. I was thinking that the theories out there were really cool, actually, where Iron Man says, okay, maybe we, reuse parts of Nebula, non-important parts, that helps him maybe to get somewhere safe, and then from there on they can continue. None of that happens. Captain Marvel just appears. First off in a white light where you think oh, is this an angel maybe saving him? And then, it's just Captain Marvel being there and then pushing the ship down to Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Basically just dissect it, There's nothing really cool about this other than, it seems to be she was just there. Because we don't see an explanation where it says we think Tony is somewhere in space. Please find her. We know Captain Marvel was with the Avengers first. Because oh my gosh, so many characters. What's his name again? Fury. Fury actually used that beeper that we saw in the Captain Marvel movie to call her. And then she appeared on Earth very soon. So we know from the end credits of Captain Marvel, she was there on Earth first, and probably then she got out to space again to find Tony, but we don't really know for sure. That would be nice to have, gotten at least a new little explanation. But whatever, we're going on, we're on Earth finally, so everyone's together of the survivors. They're really sad, and it's oh god, we finally survived. And they all are sitting together, of course, in the Avengers headquarters, and planning, how can we do this? How can we go on? And in the end, basically, it's just Tony Stark being, you know what, I'm done with this. I needed you to Captain America in the beginning, and it didn't work out. He constantly relied on everything. It just actually collapsing because it was actually, he looked really thin, really bad. He was really struggling to survive. It was actually very lucky that Captain Marvel finally found them. Whereas Nebula seems to be working, on batteries. She didn't look very thin at all. She was mostly machine, I think.
Well, she's kind of like a cyborg, isn't she? She's
Yeah, but that would imply that there's just something, organic on her that would, lose mass, for example, because Tony in that moment looked very thin, as a human does, because he's basically running out of fuel and consuming everything he has in biomass.
Yeah.
That was very interesting to note, actually, that they kept this consistent, I think. So anyway, back to Earth, and the team that's left over, which is basically Black Widow, Captain America, Nebula, Rocket, and Captain Marvel, and even, is the Hulk there as well? Yeah, the Hulk is there as well, right? They're saying, okay, we need to find Thanos and give him the rest, and this time they won't die to him. And it's okay. Oh yeah, and James Rhodes also is following along with them. Right. So with Romanoff, Banner, Rogers, Rocket, Thor, and Rhodey joining up together. And they find actually Thanos. And he's on his barn. And this is the next thing where I really found is kind of interesting how they did this. Which is leading up to the whole thing where I think if this would have been the end of Infinity War, this would have been very unfulfilling and really lacking. Whereas how Infinity War ended was actually kind of okay. So they actually land on the planet where Thanos is being held, which is just called the Garden, basically. And you see him like taking some crops to his hut, and he's making a meal, you know. And you see his left arm is like really broken and burned. And well, as the heroes arrive, they of course take him over, and there's apparently not much of a fight. And why is that? Very, very simple. Thanos actually destroyed the Infinity Stones, and it almost killed him himself too. Because, you know, if the stones were still there, which was the plan, that the Avengers get the stones, they could reverse everything. But as it is, Thanos actually destroyed the stones, so nothing could be redone or reversed basically after the decimation. So what actually ends up is happening, Thor just goes in after Thanos being held down and just chops off Thanos' head with a Stormbreaker. And you can really see already there how Thor, leading up to this moment, which is like 25 minutes in, is always like very, very calm and just like still not resting. You know, he's still uneasy about everything. And he just chops off the head, says, "I went for the head this time." It's like, okay, yeah, we see that. And you feel like he's not okay. He really feels that he lost a lot of people, basically like half of the universe. So that ends, and well, after that, 5 years time skip. Because that actually, if that would have been, again, the Infinity War ending, I was thinking, this would be really unsatisfied. And I think that was actually the goal here, to see like, okay, the Avengers failed. They avenged everyone now by killing Thanos. You know, justice has been served to him, but it's still not a win. It's actually still a loss. And that's the theme of the next few minutes of the movie, which I found really interesting. So what do you think about the movie so far until this point?
I thought they wrapped up. Well, they didn't wrap it. Well, I thought there were quite a lot of unanswered questions.
What questions? Yeah.
Points.
Whatever.
Stuff like that, from the first movie, which I thought they should do anyway. And that's probably what bulked it out, because there's so much they didn't answer in the very first movie. So yeah. That's what I got. It's just like the first part of the movie is just like, oh, okay, so we were kind of expecting this to happen. It could have been predicted, I think. And that was what mainly was in the movie. And I found it really interesting that they had all their old hairstyles, because I mean, in some of the trailers they did look a little bit older and stuff like that. Yeah. But like this was like right after it, and everything was like still so raw, and I think it did help with some of the things in the later acts of the film. It helped us remind that it helped them remind us that this is what happened in the first place, and this is what happened to them 5 years later, when we get in the next part of the movie. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, actually.
But go on.
Right, so 5 year time skip, and now there actually comes the grieving part where everyone's like, oh well, this is it, we can't do much about it, but here we are now. And so what actually happens, besides some stuff that they show, like groups where they give them like each other help and talk about how, like, even Captain America as Rogers basically just like coming into talk groups to say like, oh yeah, we survived this, we have to go on and everything. But deep inside, you know, when he's saying this, he can't go on. We see also later on how Black Widow, for example, is doing some phone calls because Nick Fury is not there anymore. She basically takes over the Avengers operation and tries to at least, you know, organize anything that they can with, for example, Wakanda, where there were, of course, a few survivors still. So that's operating. Rocket is in space. Captain Marvel is in space. This time with a haircut, which I would want to ask, like, what do you think is better for her? Like the short haircut or the long one? Just out of curiosity.
I think I like the long one.
Yeah.
Because it kind of shows that she has history, but she hasn't forgotten. Like the white hair in her in her hair right now. When she grew out the red hair, I think she kept it just so it's like
you mean Black Widow?
What actually happened? Yeah, Black Widow.
because I was asking about Captain Marvel.
I don't like her hairstyle. Let's just say I don't like it.
I just found just a general point. I don't wanna like go on too hard about Captain Marvel because we're gonna talk later about her anyway. But I was just thinking, cool. Now there's a few changes which we saw also in the later comics because I was reading actually leading up to the movie Captain Marvel. A few collections of stories about her, and it was quite fun to see how there were different styles. I was thinking like the short hair style looks kind of more cool because it's more, dynamic. She's flying around in space, and fighting everything. It looks like, more fitting, I'd say, because longer hair would probably always be in the face and something like that. Although, as we saw in Captain Marvel, the long hair just like goes up in the air. It's like not in the way. Okay.
I don't like it though, but then they can always play on the poetic license that even if her long hair does get in her face, then it doesn't really like affect her much because it's all made up anyway. Like
yeah, sure.
like they can just come up with some like solution to it.
Definitely.
Yeah, because you can think of anything for hero movies.
But yeah, what's good is what you actually pointed out also with Black Widow. Yes, now she doesn't have to hide herself anymore because probably the whole decimation thing led also to the Avengers not being like seeked out anymore as war criminals. So she could basically come back to her own self, which was of course the red hair version, but she was still growing out, the blonde hair. She didn't cut off right away after it was like sufficiently regrown. So she kept that around actually, and it was like interesting to see as a continuation, I think. But what actually is cool about this whole 5-year time skip is like finally, Scott Lang comes out of his van because he was stuck in a quantum realm, as we saw at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Or basically Ant-Man 2. And also another thing where like you don't need to see it necessarily, but if you saw it, you know already what was happening because like it was not really explained again, which is what I really hate about the Avengers movies sometimes, especially later ones, of course. There's things like just shown without any explanation. You have to just accept them. And if you don't know the prequel, like the movies leading up to these events, like Captain Marvel and like Ant-Man 2, you just don't get why the things are the way they are. But that's just a side point. So yeah, Scott Lang finally gets out of the quantum realm on accident because I think a rat was just messing with the onboard like buttons and everything. And so like, boop, he's there. And as he goes out and finally joins back into the world, he finds out, the decimation happened like 5 years ago. He just doesn't get it. As we later learn also, it was just barely like 5 hours for him in the quantum realm where it was just time was just very much differently, much, much slower compared to the real world time. Or let's just say our dimension time. And so he walks around, finds his daughter finally, who's 5 years older by now, gets surprised, of course, and he also finds out that he actually was, considered to be snapped, basically, because he couldn't be found anymore. So his best idea was actually to say, you know what, I go to the Avengers headquarters. He was already there, and that we saw in the original Ant-Man movie, because he fought against the Falcon. And there he meets up again with Captain America and Black Widow, as they're just right now talking about how they can't move on. They want to do something, but they don't know how. And that was when the plan was born, actually, to say, okay, we have to do something with the quantum realm. We have to go back in time, maybe, if that is possible. So, of course, the first thing that the three do is they seek out Tony Stark, of course, who's now living in a hut in the woods, which I think is quite a nice thing to do if you have that much money. Why not just go there, live outside of the realm of society, right?
It's not quite a hut. It's a mansion. It's a wood log cabin.
It's very sizable, of course,
that any rich person would love to retire in, I think.
I would love to go over there, and I'm not a millionaire, so yeah, definitely. And we see actually that Tony has a daughter now with Pepper together.
Yes.
And it's quite interesting. It's like, wow, he actually did move on. He did finally come to closure because he, as you know from all the movies prior to, of course, Endgame, he was already dealing with that ever since the Avengers movie after New York. He was suffering under PTSD. We saw that very much pointed out in Iron Man 3 and how it really changed his character. And he moved on. He got the operation done after Iron Man 3 and everything. It's like really, really amazing that his character actually finds some sort of peace after he basically failed on that planet in Infinity War, which I can't recall anymore because there's so many names in the movies.
There's so many.
Please forgive us. We'll come back to that another time. But yeah, the three of them talk to him and he says just like, no, I have family now. I'm done with it. It's not possible. And they three leave and then they try to meet up with Bruce Banner. Because they think like, okay, here's a smart guy. Maybe he can help us. And it's like the very first thing I was thinking, oh my God, what has happened? So in Avengers Endgame, we meet the Hulk, but not the Hulk. So here's the first big spoiler. If you really like, if you feel like until here, this is a good movie and you have not seen it and you have maybe the intention to see it, leave now, because from here on, here are the big spoilers which really change how you view the film and which really take away the enjoyment of it. We've been talking for half an hour. You know that it's good. But the three actually find the Hulk. The Hulk went under therapy in the last 5 years, like 18 months, he says, with gamma radio. And he actually figured out how to stay the Hulk and Bruce Banner at the same time. So we have a mixture, which is just a very tall green guy, very muscular, but more with the face, of Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. And he also kept his own personality now. So this is like Bruce Hulk, or I don't know, Hulk Banner is really weird to say. And it really looks odd also in the 3D animation department, where I think I can see this working with the Hulk, It was always like he's supposed to look weird, and this is like his thing. He's angry, he's like swollen and everything. But if you actually try to put Mark Ruffalo's head on the body of the Hulk, it's just like fell apart to me a little bit. It was fine. Acting was cool, and of course everything else was very funny. Did you not
like it?
But overall I was thinking, this is really weird. Because there was also like no warning about it, And I don't think I've gotten used to it until the very end. I think still today it's like, oh, it's a little weird. But this is like why I said this is a very big part of the movie, because it flips around what you've been learning from the past decade, basically, about that character, So what was your impression of the Hulk?
I don't... I mean, I would have never anticipated it.
Yeah.
I would have never, said any, I don't really know, I think I like that he's a mixture now, but it just... I don't know, I never really liked the Hulk anyway, so it doesn't really bother me that much.
Okay.
But I kind of like the whole thing where he's calmed down now and there's no raging big monster that he has to battle.
Hulk smash.
But yes, literally. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's very funny. Yeah, definitely very funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, they go on with some quips here and there that we just skip. And the basic thing is like they actually go on into the Avengers headquarters and try out a few things. In the meantime, basically on the same evening where Tony Stark was visited from the other Avengers, he's like, okay, one last simulation and then we go to bed. And you think like, huh, what? Last simulation? Interesting. And you actually see a 3D model above his living room table where it's just trying to figure out time travel himself. And my first impression was like, oh, he's actually thinking about it. He's trying to figure it out. It's like, just in hindsight, I think, no, actually, he was all the time trying to figure out time travel. And that is why he was so resisting to the other Avengers saying it's not possible. You can't do it, because he was already working on it probably ever since he came back to Earth, for 5 years, basically. I'm like, oh, interesting. So this actually does come together. And yeah, as we see in the movie, yes, he figures out time travel, basically by just saying we need to consider how time works differently. And what we see then in the Avengers headquarters again, where just Hulk tries to, put Scott Lang through time, it just works differently. And as we see then a few failed attempts where Scott Lang just turns into the time machine, comes out as a child, then he turns in the time machine, comes out back as an old man. They try to literally just fix it at this point. And they finally manage to do this, and then Tony Stark just drives in front of the door and is like, hey man, did you turn into a baby? And it's like, oh yeah, he knows exactly what was happening. And basically the explanation was they were trying to put time through Scott Lang, but not Scott Lang through time. It's like, oh, yeah, kind of makes sense, I guess. I don't know. So the whole gist is like they all figured it out, and it's like they're building inside the Avengers headquarters literally a time machine. And now the plan comes together actually. Okay, what do we do? They have a few of these PIM particles, which they need to use that time travel, because they need to get very small. And then they also need a device to navigate it. So Tony Stark actually comes up with a little navigator wristband in his hand, which he can use to just jump through time. And they have the very cool suits, which we saw already in the fan articles and figurines with like white and red themed suit, which I find really cool. From then on, actually, the plan comes together how they want to basically finish it all off. And that was just very easily done. They find Cliff Barton because they already heard about him, how, for example, the Yakuza were killed after all, and Black Widow goes in and just basically gets him out and says, you know what, you've done enough killing, you come with us now. And then, of course, also Nebula and Rocket are back to Earth, and they try to help, of course, the Avengers, the original Avengers, to get everything corrected. And the plan basically is finding all the stones in the past, bringing them to the future, and then redoing the snap in their dimension. Because, as they say, time travel is a bitch. Because if they were going to go back into the past, this will become the new future, and they can't undo just by time travel what has happened there. They can't change the future that they are in right now. Quantum theory, I'll just put it there. If you've seen a bit of Dragon Ball Z, you know how that works. Time travel is basically just jumping through different alternative dimensions and not being on a linear time scale. So in the end, the plan is they actually have to find out that there's, after just like thinking through everything, they try to recreate basically the whole timeline where the Infinity Stones went throughout the last 10 years that we saw in the movies, where the whole stones were and everything. And they came out with actually time, mind, and space stones were all in the Battle of New York in the very first Avengers movie, where, of course, the Sanctorum, oh my god, not Scrotum, the Sanctum Sanctorum was holding the time stone.
I thought you said scrotum there. I was like,
I literally said it and I was like, hold on, no, that's not the word. Sanctorum, that's the word. The Mind Stone was, of course, in the spear, and the Space Stone was in the Tesseract that she used. So there were, 3 Infinity Stones at that time in New York. Then, of course, we have the Soul Stone, which is still on Vormir. And we got the, the Power Stone, which was found at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, actually. And we have the Reality Stone, which is still in, oh my gosh, what's the name? In the second Thor movie.
Foster.
Yes, in Jane Foster, basically, in Asgard. The Asgard thing, what's what I'm missing. So yeah, they split up. So one team goes to New York, one goes in space, basically, and one team goes to Asgard. And until this point, I was thinking, okay, Hulk, that's really weird what they're doing with this. But then we get to see Thor. And oh my god, Thor, dude, what happened? Emily, what did you think about Thor when you saw him first?
I was like, oh my gosh, what on earth happened? He let him go. He let himself go. I was like,
really bad.
Not sure if I like the muscles or the dad bod. I don't know.
Yeah, so what happens is Hulk and Rocket actually go to New Asgard on Earth, this time where the rest of the Asgardians, which still survived the Infinity War scene, as Thanos does, he only killed half of the Asgardians, the rest survived. They actually landed on Earth and started to live their life there, and in there also Thor was for the last 5 years after he killed Thanos. And you could already see like Thanos, like what he did and how he surprised him. Thor just feels like a failure. And just continues on. After 5 years, he let him go. Basically, zero training, just like drinking beer all the time. And Meek and Cork, right? That's the names. They were there with him playing some Fortnite.
Yes.
Yeah, like it was really funny. And yeah, he let himself go. He got a big belly, long hair, and just really not good anymore. It's like, oh my god. And basically, this is a recreation of The Dude, from.
Yeah.
God, what's that movie called again? I have to cut out so many things from this podcast just because I forgot names. The Big Lebowski, right? Yeah. And the cool thing is actually Tony acknowledges that because he calls Thor later on also Lebowski in one scene. He calls him a lot of things, but Lebowski is one of the things that's like, yeah, they actually acknowledge they recreated basically the look of the dude in The Big Lebowski. And it's like, yeah, oh my god. the funniest thing is it doesn't change. Throughout the whole Endgame movie, he stays that way. It was hilarious. In the final scene where he's just like walking up to Thanos, like, all right, I have my hammer now, and I'm just gonna go in and get my old armor thing. I was like, yeah, and even the armor has a belly now. I kind of laughed when I saw it for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Not to just overdo things, let's go through the three timelines. Basically, the very first and I think easiest to retell story was actually of Asgard, because Thor and Rocket go to Asgard. They try to retrieve the Reality Stone, and the whole gist of that storyline was just like Thor comes back, feels really nostalgic, and he sees first of his old home, basically, of course, which was destroyed in Thor Ragnarok. His mother again, of course, who died in the Thor the Dark World. And yeah, so it ends up actually that his mother actually finds him because she's very smart. And as she says himself, I know there's something wrong with you. You're not from here. And Thor's like, but I didn't tell you anything. And she says like, I know, but I've been raised by witches. I know everything. It's like, oh, cool. That's actually...
Well, to be honest, it wouldn't be that hard to tell.
No, really.
Because,
she ended actually saying like, before they leave, she says like, I'm pretty sure to sell it sometimes. It's like, yeah, please. Come on, man. I mean, Chris Hemsworth looks just massive in that movie. It's like, god damn, such a good looking man. But like this version of him with the big belly was like, did not expect that, and they did not tease it at all. And it's like really cool that you went through this whole thing just unspoiled and see this. It's like, oh my god. So basically, that was like the second time when I got like fooled by the movie. It's like, did not expect that, but it sort of makes sense how things worked out. So that story basically ends very quickly as Rocket just like goes in and he gets caught, but he could evade, and Thor and Rocket just go back into the Avengers headquarters very quickly. It was very cool to see because before that, Thor actually steals Mjolnir from the old timeline and takes it back to modern day New York, or well, wherever the Avengers headquarters is. So, okay, he has Stormbreaker now and Mjolnir, which is cool, yeah. I think that's interesting. We'll come back to that on later. Moving on to the second thing, which is not that hard, but still a bit complex. I found it is amazing in New York, in the Avengers scene. The first stone, the time stone, actually very simple. Hulk just goes along and he's not Hulk anymore. He's just like Bruce Hulk or Hulk Banner. He's just like, okay, I try to blend in. It's not very hard. He just like tears off his shirt. He actually wears like clothes now. And it's just like, ooh, smash. And it's like really putting his heart in. You can just see that. And he later then finally goes to the Sanctorium, finds of course the Ancient One, and tries to just basically take off the time stone from her. But, you know, the Ancient One, she did her whole trick that she also did with Doctor Strange, and basically put Hulk's astral body out of the Hulk. And basically just Bruce Banner. And that leads to them having a conversation. How I'm like, I need the time stone. We need to save our reality. And the Ancient One's like, no, I can't do that. Actually, our reality is depending on it because we need the time stone, as we know from the Doctor Strange movie, to just fix their time. So they come actually with the plan, okay, we need the stones, but how about you give them to me and I'll bring it back to you once we're done at the same time. So they never left this reality, basically. Because they, as they said, the Infinity Stones sort of have a balance to them. If one stone's missing from reality or dimension, everything goes to shit. So basically, just Hulk gets the stone because he says, you know, Doctor Strange gave this time stone away, basically. And the Ancient One's like, oh, I didn't expect that. And we know from the Doctor Strange movie that she doesn't know what's happening after her death because she can only wind forward as long as she's alive, of course. So many spoilers that we talk about. Did you see like how Endgame puts everything into one movie that they've built up in 10 years, basically, throughout all these movies? So the reason the time stone is basically given to Hulk is because he says Doctor Strange gave this time stone away to Thanos, and basically the Ancient One says, I guess there's some reason behind this, I should do this too. And then basically she trusts Hulk all of a sudden and gives the time stone to the Hulk. Another stone, basically, I've gotten 2 out of 6. Just a few more to go. The next one is actually very cool because they found the stuff which they have gotten in Avengers movie and also, of course, the Tesseract. And basically, these two things are very easy to get, but there's a few things going wrong. I'm not going too much into the details because it takes so long, but basically, it's just like after the end of Avengers, where they have put Loki down on the floor, and they're just standing here, there in a half circle, just very heroic. After that, Tony just goes in very quickly and says, okay, Ant-Man, you go, and we have to secure basically the Tesseract from the, what's the thing called? Where was the Tesseract carried in? Suitcase. It was a suitcase, basically. Briefcase, yeah.
Okay.
I'm lacking basic English today, it's very hard. So yeah, the Tesseract was actually transported in a briefcase, and they just went from the top of the tower down to the floor, where it was like basically taken by Thor and Loki back to Asgard. But this time, because they changed the time a little bit, Ant-Man goes in and gives Tony a heart attack because he's messing around with the power thing in his chest, which, still keeps him alive and everything at this time. Basically just like lets it drop, and he wants to just like very quickly retrieve then that briefcase and take the Tesseract on them, so they would have 3 out of 6 by then. But sadly, the Hulk, who was forced to take the stairs instead of the escalator, is like, no more stairs, smashes out and basically interrupts the whole, heist thing which they had going on with the Tesseract, and basically it just drops down, Loki takes the Tesseract, and he vanishes. And I say, oh no, we have a problem, the Tesseract is gone, and they were not allowed to have mistakes because they only had a very limited portion of Pym particles, which allows them to go back and forth in time. So that was like one stone missing. Luckily, though, of course, Captain America was smart enough. He had a different way, because the staff actually was also in the same building, but in a different elevator. And they basically recreated what they did already with the Winter Soldier, where Captain America was, surrounded by goons in that elevator scene. He just fights them all at once in a very small room. I was almost expecting this to be recreated here in Endgame, but as it happens, actually he just pulls a very sneaky trick on us. He just goes in and says, yeah, the director says there could somebody stealing this, I have to take it myself. And then the guy that was leading the goons was like, I can't trust you, I have to call the director myself. And then Captain America goes in and says himself, you can trust me. And very slowly, just like we saw in the Winter Soldier, he goes in and says, hey, Hydra. I say, oh no, he did the forbidden thing. It's like, oh my god. He basically goes all the steps just to get the thing, and what's cool about this is it actually worked. And we have this example already in comics where Captain America just stands over his shield and says like, hey, the Hydra, and it's like, oh no, is it turned bad? Well, in this movie we saw that was actually a good reason, because then they trusted him, gave him the staff, and he just could basically walk out. That was very funny. What do you think about this story point, actually, Emily? Because I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, you have. So
just stop me if you want to say something, please.
Your heart stopped, to be honest. But yeah, I think this is a very... I kind of like it how he knows the knowledge of what his future self knows and what he knows now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think it's so ironic that like he uses that, and he doesn't have to use violence to get the Tesseract. It's the Tesseract, right? Yeah.
No, it's actually the stuff where the Mind Stone is in there.
Really?
Yeah, the Tesseract is in the briefcase with the Avengers, but what he tries to get is the staff from Loki.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was actually cool. Yeah, so no violence needed, right? Actually, smart solution to that conflict. I was really, positively surprised by that. What do you think about the next scene? Because then after they leave, he's like, I gotta take another stop, and he's basically everyone behind. And then he meets past Captain America, and they're both in the very exact same, suit. So it's like, oh no, what will happen? So the old Captain America says, Loki escaped. This must be him, because I'm myself. There couldn't be any other explanation. Meanwhile, future Captain America was there like, oh no, what do I do now? And basically they just beat the crap out of each other. And the best part about that was then past Captain America just says like, I can do this all day. You know his thing that he always brings up. And future Captain America is just like, I know, don't say it. It's a very cool moment where you just acknowledge like they've been doing this for 10 years by now. The people know it. He knows it. We're done with this. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. I know. I'm just going to finish you off quickly. And he basically manages to do that and just moves on, and basically he's done with his bullet. So we are 3 out of 4 stones recovered, where the Tesseract is now gone, sadly. What are you thinking about this fight, actually? Because you wanted to say something about that beforehand. Before
you interrupted me. Yeah.
What? Oh, sorry.
No, don't worry. You do it a lot, and it's fine. So I thought, I liked the comments about the ass. Captain America's ass.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was quite a cool scene. Seeing both of them go up against each other, which was really cool. Yeah. And it was really interesting because having one Captain America know everything that's going to happen, and then the other one that's like right in the present, is really interesting that they still have the same abilities, the same level of action. They both have the level of skill, and when they go up like head to head with each other, like there's no like there.
Yeah.
Like there's so much. I can't describe it. Like there's so much. Like when they go head to head, they are so. I can't describe it, honestly.
It's just very cool how the past clashes with the future, you know? It's like the one who's just like very brave, he just got back actually after being frozen for 70 years. The other one is just fighting for another decade already, and he lost everything basically. And the two, oppositions are like, I have the right to be here and I have to take this thing. And the other one says like, you don't, but I don't know how to tell you without changing this past, basically. And it's like very interesting. He basically just like fights him back, gets him to touch or be touched by the staff, and then is basically just taken out. And then future Captain America goes down the escalator. It's like, okay, I got it. Right, so we took a little break because we didn't expect to talk that much about it, but Endgame has lots of things to unpack. So let's move on, right, Emily?
Yes, let's move on. Right. What's the next thing that we're going to talk about, House Test?
Because the Battle of New York basically is finished, Scott Lang gets sent back home to the Avengers headquarters. Tony and Rogers are actually standing there and saying, like, actually, we can't go on because we still need the Tesseract. And the plan basically is that they go back even further into the past, back to 1970, where on a shield base, basically, Captain America was prepared, So we go actually back all the way back to the 70s, where, isn't even further ago? Wait. No.
Yeah, it's 1970.
That is, but Captain America was around when the Nazis were around, so that has to have happened even earlier. So that's actually after Captain America has been produced, basically. Yep. Sorry. Right, so 1970. They're going back actually even further, and they say, we just get Pym Puddles back then. Because actually Hank Pym, who was the original Ant-Man, and Howard Stark, the father of Tony Stark, were both working on the same military base at that time. So the basic plan was basically Rogers and Stark go back into the past even further, whereas Tony gets down to the basement where the Tesseract is being held, because he has his fancy technology and just very easily scan for that energy source. And Rogers goes in and tries to find the lab of Hank Pym to get the Pym particles so they can go back into the, original future. And that is very easily done, actually, because there's not much happening other than that they basically get stuck out, but not really identified, of course, because it was past. And there was two cool things that actually happen. Captain America just stands there and actually sees his basically old flame, his old love, Peggy Carter, behind a window, and he's already smitten again, and says like, oh my god, he misses her, basically. And I found this really halfway heartbreaking, halfway lovely, how after all these years, he also gets something back from the past, at least temporarily. And it really probably gets going what will also happen on later. But that is for later. What also happens with Tony is he meets his own father, Howard Stark. And he says like, oh yeah, my wife's having a baby very soon. I don't know how to deal with it. And we basically get to know Howard Stark for the first time as a parent, or going to be parent. And Tony as, the future child who never had much time with his father, other than, back in, when was it, 1991? When the Winter Soldier killed the parents? I think it was back then. So that was the very first time that actually adult Tony Stark has time to talk with his father, although he can't, of course, disclose that to him. And we have a few cool back and forth, because Tony is now also a father, as we saw in the beginning of Endgame. And they basically having just, a conversation on the same level. I found that was really cool. What's your thoughts about that so far, Emily? What did you think?
It's kind of cool that he got some last words with his father, because,
things happen.
Yeah, because things happen, and I think it's nice to have some of that fatherly
Connection?
love that fatherly love connection that he probably never experienced before. And the last time he probably saw his parents was probably when he was a young adult, basically.
Yeah.
And this was probably the last chance that he could ever talk to him about anything and stuff like that. So it's really sad.
Yeah. Was really sad, but also kind of cool. And they actually end, basically, getting everything done. And shortly before they split, and Tony joins again with Rogers, he's just he goes in, hugs Howard, and actually says, "Thank you for everything." And Howard's like, "What?" And Tony's like, "For what you did for our country, of course." Meanwhile, knowing Tony basically really needed this moment, and it's quite cool how after all the shit that happened, this was, me being able just through the time travel, and that was still something good found, even if they were unsuccessful in retrieving basically all the stones. Moving on then, I guess, the two are, of course, having the Pym particles, so they go back to the original future, which makes it, of course, 4 out of 6 Infinity Stones retrieved. The Tesseract, the Mind Stone, and that staff, of course, the Time Stone from Hulk, and of course the Reality Stone with Thor and Rocket. Only 2 more left, and these are actually quite easy to deal with, because Nebula and Rhodes are just going into the past in the space particle, basically, where space particle is space dimension, where the first Power Stone was retrieved on that lonely planet. When they actually it's really funny. They find Quill from the Guardians of the Galaxy in the introduction scene, basically from Guardians of the Galaxy, and they just slap him on the head. It's like, whatever you're doing here, we're not talking to you. We just take your key thingy and just retrieve the thing. And I found this really refreshing because it didn't take too long, actually. And it's actually very important because they started another thing with that here, which is a leading thing, of course, to the conclusion. So what happens basically is that Nebula, because she's so much machine, all of a sudden through the time travel paradox, happens to basically become one person, and that the past version of Nebula, who is by that point in time evil, just as her sister, of course, Gamora is also evil, and just really the daughter of Thanos, Nebula in the past just has a circuit short break, basically, and all of a sudden she's projecting scenes from the future Nebula. And Thanos sees this like, what is happening? We need to analyze this. And basically, just to shorten it down, they found out actually that there is time travel all of a sudden happening. They found out Thanos actually managed to get the stones, and that is just confirming again Thanos is just meant to be doing this, to do the snap. And of course, the plan starts out how they want to try to stop also the future people to stop them now in the past.
Well, he did say that he was inevitable.
Yeah, that was actually in the beginning, right? Yeah. That's why he destroyed the stones, because it says, I'm inevitable, and this also basically just confirms the past Thanos, like, yeah, this will happen, I am inevitable, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they get the Power Stone, 5 out of 6. But shortly before Rhodes and Nebula can travel back into the future, after they split with Clint and Natasha, which went on to go to Vormir to retrieve the stone there, Nebula again shortens out. Rhodey goes on to the future, but Nebula is stuck. So before she can actually go away, she just basically falls down the floor as it's basically just a breakdown because their systems are not coping with 2 Nebulas being existing at once in one universe. And that's how they basically capture her. Just to make it very short and sweet. So that's the 5th stone being done for, and we move actually on to the 6th and, worst stone. Because as you can imagine yourself, after you've seen Infinity War, where Gamora was being thrown down from that high point by Thanos to retrieve actually the Soul Stone, which is demanding a soul for a soul, basically. Well, either Clint or Natasha has to die. And I found this actually really well done. What did you think about this scene? How they went on and basically did the same thing just like in Infinity War.
Sorry, what?
Retrieving the Soul Stone.
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting scene. Definitely, I think when they were both going to sacrifice themselves, obviously Natasha, she has like absolutely no one, and like whereas Hawkeye, well, is he Hawkeye?
Well, he's probably referred to as himself as Ronin by now, but I don't think it was actually called out by any character that he is Ronin, but he is representing what is known in the comics as Ronin. I just call him Hawkeye.
Well, when Hawkeye, because he has like a whole family, and when he loses them, like his heart is like absolutely broken and goes on like massive like massacres and stuff, and he was like, "Oh, I have to die." And then because Natasha's like an assassin, she feels like she has to die instead, and it's a massive like argument of who dies.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of like how it turned out, because they were both fighting till the end, and when she finally got the last
basically the last word, who's gonna be it?
Yeah, the last word, like she basically, that was basically it. Like he could do nothing about it, but it was all for like the greater good. And I kind of respect her for that. Like after everything that she's been through and stuff like that. So yeah,
it's actually crazy.
I kind of like what she did.
After the years,
herself.
Yeah, after years they found each other again, basically, and even when they were in space, Clint was saying like, "Oh, this is much different from Budapest," a line which they had dropped since the very first Avengers, I think, and it just like shows how the connection is. They've been working together for a long time by that point, and they know each other very well. And it's just like back and forth. It's like, no, I'm gonna sacrifice myself. No, you're gonna. No, I'm. The other person says, I'm gonna sacrifice myself. It's like back and forth. They're actually literally fighting over it, shooting each other to stop the other one from basically jumping down. And in the end, it's basically just like they both fall down, and Natasha basically tries to use a hook to save themselves, including Clint, of course. But as it happens, Clint is the one who's like just holding on to that hook, and the rope that's connected to that, and Natasha's just being held by the hand of Clint, and she just says, "Let me go, it's my time, I need to do this," and Clint's like, "No, I need to go, whatever." In the end, Natasha just like drops herself off, whereas Clint is still hanging in the air, and then the whole shtick happened. Like, he wakes up in water and has the souls in his hand, and that's 6 out of 6 stones retrieved, I can also agree, like, this was actually sort of satisfying to see how it turns out, because we know Clint has much more family, much more future to go on, whereas Natasha basically just says, it's okay, whatever it takes, which is the whole motto, of course, about this timeline thing. So whatever it takes, we need to do this. And yeah, it's good that not just one person says, I'm going to do it, they drop off and then it's done. They're actually fighting for it to make it even more exciting, because you don't know who's going to end up, on the bottom end here. So all the 6 stones are retrieved, and even Nebula is back again into the original timeline. So they're all standing there, and they're actually preparing. Okay, what do we do now? We have all the stones. Tony invents, basically, with the nanomachine technology, a glove which can hold all these stones and then can transfer the power of them over to the wielder of the, Iron Gauntlet, I guess, Iron Man Gauntlet. And after some back and forth, they say, like, Thor needs to do it. No, Hulk needs to do it and everything. It's Hulk actually who gets to do the snapping, because it says like, oh, most of the energy is gamma radio based, and he's basically made for that. And we actually see, like, after some back and forth, he's just like, doing it, and it basically almost costs his right arm. But after a few seconds of being unsure, we see like, okay, it's happening. People are coming back. Because how do we see it? This is like the craziest thing, how the whole part of the Soul Stone is basically the last thing they do before they get back to the future. He gets a call from his wife. And that just confirms, like, yeah, the people that have been snapped are now back again. But they sadly don't have much time to celebrate anything because the Nebula that came back to the future is actually the evil version, the past Nebula, whereas the future Nebula was getting caught, as I said before. So what they do is actually they take the whole gigantic ship from Thanos, transfer it through the time machine, with Pym particles, it's very easy to do, back to the future, the original timeline. So Thanos is basically back, just like a past version, and they actually start the assault. And the whole idea is, of course, because they had all the Infinity Stones together, basically just put through time, there was not much effort for Thanos to, getting the stones now, because they were all collected already. He just needs to take them and then do the snapping. And that's basically the whole ending part of the whole movie. And there's just so many things happening. Let's do like the top 3 things, basically, that we want to talk about, just not to make it all too long. Basically, it's just like Thanos sits down and says, like, oh, they're coming anyway. He shot down the headquarters a little bit, so they were only Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America ready to fight, whereas the other ones were stuck in the underground. And then they start fighting first. And as we see, part 1 basically just consists out of Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America trying to stop Thanos, but we just see, how really powerful he is. He has this double sword thing which is wheeling around, and he just can't be stopped, Thor gives us everything. He uses Stormbreaker, uses lightning and everything. And it's not really, clear if it's because he's not been fighting for that long or off his belly, but he just doesn't really take a scratch on Thanos. And it's really sad. So that was really devastating, right? But Emily, what's your opinion on what happens after that? What happens after that, actually?
Well, so the massive battle, not the massive
battle. No, a little before that, when Mjolnir was flying around all of a sudden.
When what was flying around?
Mjolnir, the hammer.
Oh yes, the hammer.
The hammer.
That was interesting. Well,
what happened? Should I do this part?
Well, didn't Captain America pick it up because he was worthy of it?
Yes. Oh my God! How insane was that? Right?
I know. The whole audience cheered, and I was like,
"Yeah,
oh, okay, that's cheerable. Let's just say."
Terrible?
Yeah.
Why? Or cheerable?
Cheerable, yeah. Cheerable.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry, I understood terrible. I was like, why? Yeah, cheerable. And my theater did the same thing. Well, it was just like, no, what? Oh my God! We just celebrated this whole scene, just like when they Hulk was smashing Loki around left and right. It was just like times 10, times 100, because all of a sudden all the things come together. Captain Rogers, from the very first moment when they talk to the Doctor, he says like, I need a good person to do this. And then in Avengers of Ultron, Age of Ultron, on the party scene where Captain America tries to lift Mjolnir and it's just like a little bit moving. So Thor is like, well, what's happening? But nothing has happened. And only in the end they had a discussion how, like, for example, the Vision was actually able to wield Mjolnir. It's like, okay, a machine can do it, but can another human do it? And it's like back and forth and yada yada. Here's the proof, finally. Yes, all the hints that we had so far until then showed just like, in the end, Captain America was worthy of the power of Thor. And he got to wield Mjolnir. Whereas Thor was, of course, also having the Stormbreaker, so it was basically even out. And with that, with the shield and the hammer, Captain America was just basically unstoppable. They really get a good beating on Thanos. It was like amazing to see, right? It was just crazy.
It was crazy, and I did like seeing it. It was yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, very, very satisfying, even, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
But in the end, there wasn't much more use for that, sadly, because still, Thanos just like says, you know what? If I can't win, I'll just go unfair. And he basically just opens up all the, basically, like, drop stations, I guess, which is called where all the Chitauri are coming from. And he just started a huge assault. And it's like, oh no, what's happening? And the rest of the Avengers, like Ant-Man, Hulk, of course, and Barton, go out in the open and fight. It's like, okay, we can fight at least a little bit. It's like everyone's getting ready for battle, but before that actually happens, before even the Chitauri get to attack, then there's the massive high point of Endgame. It's really like, this is the peak of 10 years of storytelling, because as we already have forgotten, at this point, I have forgotten actually that the snap had worked. All of a sudden, you hear on the radio by Captain America, the Falcon talk to him and sort of, yo, Captain, are you here? And it's like, what was happening? And then all of a sudden, all these portals which Doctor Strange and all the magicians can do they open up and they just introduce lots of fighters. The people from Wakanda are there. The magicians, of course, from the different sanctoriums are there. And wasn't there a third party in there, I think? Well, basically all the heroes, of course, you know. Everyone that got snapped, they're all back and they all join the fight. And it's basically just like...
the people from Guardians of the Galaxy were there.
Oh, yeah, right. That was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
I love... It's like so many things, like visual aspects you need to see in the movie, like 3 to 5 times, I think, to really get everything done. It's like crazy. But yeah. As it happens, the fight just evolves there, and it's like, okay, we have the gauntlet again because they retrieved it from under the old headquarters, which has been blown up. And then is of course like, my Black Order, we need to get this gauntlet because it's my thing to do. And basically, there's like a whole back and forth scene in between of the whole war happening at all. And this is one cool moment actually on the one I want to have you basically review because after all, like even Spider-Man comes back, yay! Tony and Spider-Man have a little heart-to-heart scene because Tony just goes and he hugs Peter, and Peter's like, oh, it's actually very nice because he probably has never really known how it feels like to be hugged by a father figure. And Tony's also just like, now that he has a child, really understands how just how grave the mistake was that led to Spider-Man also being snapped away, and just really missed him, I guess, because he already, like from the very first moment on, he tried to, take responsibility for him.
It's probably because he's never had like anything like that before, you know.
Also. Please.
Well, he's never had anything like a father figure, or he's always just had his Aunt May. For Spider-Man. And once Iron Man got hold of him, he was like, "Oh, I have like a kid figure now. Like it's cute in its own little thing, which is cool."
It's like also the first thing he mentions when he comes back to Earth after he's been saved, like, I couldn't save the boy. And basically everyone's like, what boy? That was so important to him. It's the very first thing after he got basically saved. It's like, I'm so sorry I couldn't save you, and oh no, and everything. And probably Pepper already knew about it as well, because she knows a lot about Tony, I think, and she also knew like Spider-Man was very important to him, I guess. I'd be very, I'm very sure about that. So yeah, it's just a sign, because what happens is actually they're trying to get the Infinity Stones back into the past where they actually belong. So the past Thanos just needs to be beaten because there are no Infinity Stones there later on. It's just basically a fight against the time, basically until the Chitauri are fought back and everything. But of course, there is no way, because the headquarters has been blown up, and even before that, the ship that got back into the original timeline, back forth, whatever, basically destroyed the time machine that they built. And so there's like probably no way. But Scott Lang, smart as he says, we have the van. We can go back in time. We just use basically the navigators, and then we're good to go. So they try to actually bring the stone back through the van, and sadly the van is behind enemy lines. So what they actually try to do is they try to poke through the defense lines of the enemy, of the Chitauri, and try to get the gauntlet just at least back into the past, away from the battle. And what happens basically is like the gauntlet goes back and forth between a few characters, and then Spider-Man has it. And before Spider-Man has it, actually, there's one cool moment where he basically almost got down, but then all of a sudden, there's the Deus Ex Machina again. Captain Marvel comes back to Earth, just sort of thunder strikes from space. Because the ships actually all of a sudden turn their guns, and instead of shooting on the battlefield, they shoot up in the air, and it's like, what's happening? They try to shoot down Captain Marvel, who just very easily attacks on that giant ship, just brushing it off, nothing really worth it. And then she comes down after that was done and says like, okay, give me the gauntlet, we're bringing it back to the past. And Spider-Man's like, but can you do it? And then all of the other female Avengers, like even characters that are not really part of it so far, Pepper Potts, because she had all of a sudden her sort of female Iron Woman suit wearing for the final battle, because she also wanted to join in. So many characters there. We have Wanda, of course. We have the guy from the women from Wakanda also there. Oh my god, all the women there just standing together and saying, we are basically the female Avengers. We also have our part in this fight. It was like a very cool point to have, as a high key in this battle, because there's so much going on back and forth. They actually slowed down time a little bit to show like, hey, so it's not just a man's war. There's also where women fight here, and they actually hold them together. Just like in Infinity War, where the three women were fighting with Wanda, Natasha, and that general woman from the Wakanda people were fighting together. Now just like many, many more, and also was sadly without Natasha this time. What were you thinking in this moment, Emily? I was very curious because I was seeing this and was thinking, that's badass. I really feel great when I see this. What were you thinking in this moment?
I really liked it. It was really, yeah, it was kind of liberating when I saw it, because throughout these films it was just like women were a side thing, and up until Captain Marvel, and a little bit of Black Widow in the earlier films, but it was quite liberating to see the women club together and take down Thanos themselves. And yeah, I think all of them are great role models for, kids like everywhere. And like when I saw it, I was just like, yes, oh my gosh. I mean, to be honest, I was cheering. I started off the applause for that one.
Yeah.
I must say. But yeah, I really did enjoy that. That one specifically.
It was actually, There was also another thing before this whole battle actually started. I forgot to mention that, where like all the people are coming together through the portals, and it's like just Captain America wielding the Mjolnir, holding it up in the air. It's like, Avengers, assemble! I was also like, oh my gosh, it's happening. This is what everything led to, and this is so cool. And then additionally, also this scene is just like the another cherry on top of the whole ice cream, like gigantic cup which we got from this movie, So yeah, it was really cool.
Indeed. So
let's just, what happens next, basically just the end. There's a few things where like, okay, Captain Marvel has to go on it. She tries to get to the van to put it at least back in time. And then Thanos is like, no way, we gotta stop this. And he throws this double sword thingy into the van because it's like basically 2.5 meters tall, just like himself. The whole van just explodes. And it's like, oh, okay, what can we do now? There's trouble. So Thanos actually goes in and is now starting to fight for the gauntlet, specifically because all this other, like the Black Order was already taken down halfway, and they were fighting their own fights, and we see Captain Marvel taking it on with Thanos. And that fight was something that was, talked about so long, ever since, I think, even like after Infinity War, when Captain Marvel was already announced with a few trailers, they were like, yeah, Captain Marvel, she's the key, she's gonna stop Thanos. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way, right? I was surprised myself, but Emily, what were you thinking when you saw that Captain Marvel vs Thanos fight?
I thought she was going to finish him off, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, when the bit after happened, I was like, oh my gosh, what the frick happened? And I really wasn't expecting that. Do you just want to tell the audience what happened?
I was actually not going that far yet.
After?
I was just I was pointing out, I was just going into a little bit because throughout this whole movie, Captain Marvel was more like, here's a gimmick, she's saving the person, then she's leaving again. Because her reason being, she is basically an Avenger for a large galaxy, with multiple Earth-like planets where so many bad things happening, and that's why she's very absent for the whole Endgame stuff. And I was thinking at the end of the fight, that would have been the very greatest moment where Captain Marvel could have been like the key to winning, because she's that powerful, and she basically, she turned around the whole thing, of course, with destroying the large ship. I was thinking, okay, this is a great moment. Now, she would take on the gauntlet instead of Thanos, she would snap it, and then boom, there we go. Didn't happen that way, because Thanos is such a good fighter, actually. He's really good at it. He just takes the gauntlet, he takes the Power Stone from the gauntlet away from Captain Marvel, uses that solely, just like holding the Power Stone in his hand, basically punches Captain Marvel away and keeps the gauntlet in his hand now. And I was like, for a few seconds I was thinking, that was anticlimactic. But on the other side also shows how badass really Thanos is. It's like even Captain Marvel, who's supposed to be like the strongest of all the Avengers, couldn't stop him. But yeah, so what you were pointing at actually is the cool thing which happens actually next, which just finishes the whole fight. Because what's really cool, you saw it in Infinity War first, and he's like, having everything together, and like all the stones all of a sudden have a massive power surge through his body, and only a character like Thanos can actually survive and stand through this, huge power. He takes on the glove, he does his thing again, is basically just like standing there screaming for a few seconds, and then all of a sudden like Iron Man goes in and says like, no, I have to stop it. He tries to grab the gauntlet away from Thanos, but Thanos just very easily just like pushes him away. Doesn't even use the gauntlet, just like pushes him away, and Iron Man is by the sides, and then Thanos does a snap. And everyone's like, oh no, not again. Thanos does another snap. But it turns out it's actually just a plop. What happens is like, yeah, all the Infinity Stones have been stolen, and the gauntlet is empty. I was like, huh? Okay. They move the camera over to Iron Man. We just see as an audience how the gauntlet's just forming in his hand through the nanomachines, and how the Infinity Stones are on his right hand, and Tony breaks out, I am Iron Man, and he snaps, and all the Chitauri, and then Thanos also disintegrate. Wasn't that great?
Yes, it was, definitely.
That was amazing.
It was amazing. I think it's a very historical moment, to be honest, throughout all...
for all of time, for all the 10 years.
Cinematic MCU, anything universe, like that is like everyone's been waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
Especially for that ending, and 10 years is a very, very long time, and a lot of people. So yeah, I'm glad it came to a little bit of an end, to be honest.
It just draws a circle through everything, It's like, it started with the very first Iron Man movie, then there was the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and so on. But, Iron Man was the starting stone for everything what just happened in the past 10 years. And he's also the ending of everything, basically. And we were already knowing, like, a few, actors have their contracts being ended. It's like, okay, it's very clear. It's in some way characters are going and leaving basically the universe. And it's quite interesting to see how it basically was done. We already know Natasha died, so the Soul Stone could be retrieved. And now after the snap, sadly, humans are just made for that power. Through the radiation of the Infinity Stones, Tony Stark dies. He dies in the battlefield with his loved people around him, with Peter Parker and, of course, Pepper Potts around him. And it's just like, it's over. Yeah. Here's one, though. And I found it very satisfying, actually, how Thanos dies. Because all the Chitauri and everything, and even that, like, the magician from the Black Order is just like, sire! And he's fading away. Whereas Thanos, he's left standing a little bit longer. He's just, like, sitting down. But instead of, like, having his head up and smiling, like he did in Infinity War, he was broken, looking down, and then just disintegrating. It was the exact same camera movement, even around the character. He's just sitting down, it's like, it's done, and poof, he's gone. That was the other good thing about that scene, actually. So there's like so many circles, just like finding the end. The smaller one from Infinity War here to Endgame, and the largest one, of course, with Tony basically giving his life and overdoing everything. We saw Doctor Strange having a few moments in between, which we skipped over, but it's like Tony talks to Strange very quickly and says like, is this the one chance? And Strange is like, I can't tell you. If I tell you, it's not going to happen. And shortly, before Iron Man goes in and steals the Infinity Stones to use them themselves, Doctor Strange actually shows to Tony, without saying any words, just like one thing in the air, it's like, this is the one chance. And he just goes in, whatever it takes, basically, uses the Infinity Stone, snaps, dies in the process, but also ends, finally, this war against Thanos. So yeah, after that was done, Tony died, of course, and we see an amazing funeral. Everyone attended, even, Captain Marvel was there, and in the end, Nick Fury even joined the scene, finally, for the one scene. Not even saying anything, he's just like standing there, basically nodding. And everyone else like, this is basically the end of the whole Avengers thing. He recruited Tony Stark for the Avengers. He started all with him, and now it also ends with him. And on the last few scenes, actually, very interesting to see. Like, Clint Barton is finally reunited with his family again. They're having a good time. The daughter of Tony Stark wants a cheeseburger, just like her father wanted when he came back from being captivated and everything. And Jon Favreau, of course, being happy again. The bodyguard is also there. Celebrate, because he was, of course, the original also director of the first Iron Man movie, basically also responsible for the star, and it was really nice that he also had a scene there. Yeah, that's that. To close it all off, of course, we also have one last question to answer. What is happening with Captain America? Well, very quickly said, he just goes back in time to deliver all the Infinity Stones after they rebuild basically the time machine. Bucky's there, Falcon is there, and of course Hulk's there to manage the whole thing. And the whole gist is like basically he's getting sent back. He takes whatever time it takes, and for them in the future, it just takes 3 seconds. And they bring him back again, try to at least. And instead of even being there, there's nothing. And it's like, Hulk, bring him back. And Bucky finally sees an old weird person just sitting on a bench. And so like Bucky goes along with Falcon. Falcon goes to the character, talks to him, and we see Captain America being old. It's something that never happened before because actually his aging is like very slowed. But what basically happened is that Captain America just went back through time and he actually lived in that time this time. So he got to be back again with Peggy Carter. He got his, sweet family life that Tony was talking about. He said to himself, I tried that sweet life that Tony was talking about. And it ends with Captain America giving the shield away, the iconic shield away to Falcon, who's becoming the next Captain America, just like in the comics actually. After the first Infinity War, Civil War, I think it was. So, yeah, that's another comic arc actually started here. And we know Disney Plus, when it launches in November, will also start a series with Bucky and Falcon, having its own TV series. So maybe they will actually continue on with that timeline from the MCU, where Falcon will have the shield from Captain America and becoming basically the new Captain America. Whereas Steve Rogers is just an old man now. He's just living his life until the end. So that's the Avengers Endgame. What do you think about it, Emily, after all?
I think I might need to see it again just so I can let things sink in, just make sure I understand everything that goes on.
Yeah.
Make sure I really do understand it because, again, I've been waiting 10 years for this. And I think I've always been an avid fan of it, like, always. And for this to finally end, like, this phase, it was kind of satisfying, but it's kind of like, oh, this is ended. Like, what now kind of thing.
Yeah. They took 3 hours to tell the story, right? They took their time, actually.
Yeah. I'm glad that they have finished it. I think so. Yeah.
The two driving forces, basically, with Captain America being the first Avenger, and Iron Man, starting the whole MCU thing. They both have their stories being, completed, and I at least felt that it was not rushed. The whole movie was like taking its time, but being at a good pace actually. They just had to tell a lot. And, in the end I was like, yeah, I'm satisfied. This is good. They did it after 10 years and a year of wait time after Infinity War. They did actually bring everything together. It has ended. And they also started a few good lines to, begin the future from here on.
Yeah. I really do look forward to what they come up with next, and obviously, it will start off with
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, that's the one. I do look forward to it.
Definitely. But I also agree I need to see it again. Because there's so many things that you just see from here on and they're missing because you're just in awe of all the things that you maybe miss small things. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it again with a more clearer head. Enjoying more what's happening because I can, anticipate it this time. It's like, yeah, it's really good. So, really worth it and really good ending.
Indeed.
Emily, where can people find you everywhere?
So they can find me on Twitter at EmilyHM45. And my game tag is Rainbow Belt. So, yeah. And where can they find you, House Test?
Well, they can find me everywhere as House Test, written HAU5 Test. And of course, you can also find us everywhere over the new Byte. TheNewByte.com is the website. From there on, there's also Twitter, Facebook, Discord, which you can find under thenewbyte.com/Discord. And of course, our YouTube channel, which has its own original URL now. So it's youtube.com/c/thenewbyte if you want to see all our videos. Thanks again out there for listening to us, to just like recoping everything. I think this was like a therapy that we also needed to just like go through because, as you said before, it's like so many things, you can't really get it all in the first try, and it's like good that we took our time with a synopsis to get through everything.
Yeah.
All right. Any last words, Emily?
No, just enjoy it, basically.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't take too long until it will come out for home release. on Blu-ray and everything.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
All right, then have a nice day and talk to you soon. And for the audience, have a nice day and bye-bye.
Bye.